A very pleasant good day to all of our viewers. Welcome to another edition of Marriage Encounter. As usual, we're delighted to be with you on the airways. And for those of you who are listening through our various social media platforms, we are so happy that you have joined us. And we thank you for taking the time to view this program. We have been for the last few weeks discussing the subjects of dealing with conflicts when spouses do not necessarily love boundaries. We are at the point where we are looking at how do we move from not loving boundaries to practicing the whole concept of respecting and loving boundaries. And we are sharing some very useful information. We know that you don't want to miss this. You don't want your spouse to miss this. So go ahead and call someone and let them know that Marriage Encounter is on. With me today, as usual, is Pastor Staton Adams. Pastor Adams, good day and welcome.
Good day, Dr. Greene. Good day to our viewers. And as always, this exciting, intriguing program, Marriage Encounter, where we share information, and sometimes our time limits does not allow us to say all that we want to say in one installment, but we're just glad to be here. Call someone up, as we'll tell you, let them join on, log on, viewing, listening, and we are going to share some more valuable information. All of this redound to better relationships, better marriages, better homes. This is what is God's desire for all of us.
Most certainly. Well, let's have a word of prayer. Almighty Father and our God, we give ourselves to you today as we share on this very important broadcast. We ask for wisdom. We pray that you will be with our listeners wherever they're joining from around the world. For those who are having challenges in their relationships, help that some things said today will prove beneficial in helping to heal and to restore. We pray that you will give our listeners the wisdom, the humility to submit themselves to you and to inculcating the principles that will result for positive change. Take full control and grant us your peace and your grace in Jesus' name. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Friends, we have been dealing with the subject of conflict, as I indicated before, and we are continuing that discussion. Last week, we were addressing the whole matter. In fact, we addressed the whole matter of submitting to God's purpose for the whole concept of respecting and loving boundaries, respecting the freedom of your spouse, understanding that your spouse has the rights, I want to use that word, the rights, maybe the entitlement to his or her opinion, and you ought to be able to respect that. We kind of did run out of time last week, so I don't know if Pastor Adams has something else to add on that before we move on to another very important element of making that switch, making that transition from not loving boundaries to loving boundaries. Some difficult changes that you're going to need to confront. Pastor Adams.
Yes, Dr. Greene. Yeah, we did share some very crucial points, and I think we were ending on the we ended on the matter of why and how some people find real difficulty in allowing the spouse the freedom. And we were talking to the consequences, what could happen to the system when one is controlling and does not allow for freedom. But that's the downside. But there's an upside as well. And I was alluding to the upside, and then I probably wanted to add one more example. The freedom-loving spouses, it can be so beneficial to the relationship. Right, because remember I was giving the illustration where, sometimes when you allow the person the freedom and they know that they have that freedom, that right, that authority, they will consult you without your asking. And I think you were making that point and I was making the illustration in my own experience, and I think that I could give a direct experience out of my family, of my marriage. For example, the freedom, because my wife comes from a background of business family background and has is smart in terms of finances and all of that. And that's up there. A lot of freedom, and I thank God for the freedom that I've given her. I mean, to live on a pastor's paycheck. And so I remember the time when she was not working, when it was one paycheck alone. She did some magical things because she had that freedom, knowing the circumstances and knowing the experience from which came. So I'm saying that freedom can be beneficial. Giving your spouse that kind of freedom can be beneficial. How she would make much with little and do some things that I probably would not do. So there are blessings and benefits. So we just have to see it from both sides. And we are talking to the positive side of it now. So there can be a lot of blessings, and particularly depending on the strength and the skill set that spouse may have, and allowing them the freedom to do that particular thing or to perform that particular task.
When individuals are aware of their independence, so to speak, when they are aware that their opinions matter, that their point of views are respected, they feel more at ease, and they're willing to take initiatives, which can be so good for the relationship. And so, as you rightly said, Pastor Adams, when we give our spouses the freedom, they will come and ask us our opinions. And that's the idea. You want to have the kind of relationship where there is that freedom, where there is that mutual respect, where there is that understanding. That if my spouse sees me put on something that is definitely not good, because I know my spouse is going to speak honestly. When my spouse says, honey, I think you made a mistake with that combination, then I don't have to argue. I shouldn't argue. I should know that my spouse is speaking frankly and honestly, and say, okay, maybe something is wrong with me. I'm getting old or something, but thanks anyhow. So it adds to the richness of your experience as a married couple. And I think a week or two ago, we spoke about loving your spouse beyond respecting your spouse or who your spouse is, apart from what benefits you get from the relationship. But even when you do that, that adds value and that adds benefit to you. Because if my spouse has a healthy self-concept, it is going to make them a better spouse. If my spouse has a healthy concept of who they are, last week, I believe it was, or was it the week before, we spoke about emotional intelligence and knowing what makes you tick. When you have an emotionally intelligent spouse, it really makes a difference. You benefit from that. And each of you will contribute to the development and the progress of the other. And that's the situation that God wants. When God spoke about giving Adam a suitable companion, it was really referring to the matter of having the opportunity to relate to somebody on the same level with you. Remember the animals that Adam had named, they were inferior to Adam, and the God who created Adam was superior to Adam. Adam had no compatible companion. So he had creatures on a lower level, and of course the creator on a higher level. He had nobody on his level, and God made Eve so that he could have somebody on his level. So we are to relate to our spouses from the perspective that my spouse is on my level. It is not my spouse on a different level. I'm not looking down or looking up, but it is looking across. And that makes a significant difference.
Okay, so very important. And we said we are moving on. So how do I know that I am moving from a spouse who does not love boundary to a spouse who is beginning to love boundary? And one of the other very important thing is that if I realize that if I still have the tendency to withdraw and to take on a posture of aloofness, even avoidance, as I show negative emotions, as you said, I'm not behaving emotionally intelligent. I may attack, I may even attack my spouse, and to make the person feel guilty, it's evidence that I am still struggling to becoming a boundary loving spouse. Sometimes we might not say it in words, but sometimes we say action speaks louder than words. So if I'm still behaving in these ways, I still have to have my own self-awareness to see and understand that, well, look, I may say one thing, but I am not actually I am not even behaving. I am not walking the talk, if I would want to say that, right? I am not walking the talk. So yes, so one is gonna restrain from the tendency of withdrawing from the spouse and making the person feel guilty, about whatever choice or decision they're making, as if I was not in this. You made the decision. I don't think it was the right thing. Yet you go ahead. We didn't consult, and so you want to make the person feel guilty. And even to come to the point where you're assuming that it's not going to turn out right and it was not the right thing after all, or something like that, So we are talking to the point where we can help the person to move from one place to the other, right? And if you still find yourself acting out in this kind of a way, then there's still work to be done in moving from a spouse that not love boundary to a spouse that is becoming someone who loves boundaries.
The issues that you're raising here, Pastor Adams, issues of restraining from certain tendencies, the tendency to shame, the tendency to make your spouse feel guilty. So we're talking about blaming, we're talking about attacking, we're talking about withdrawal, we're talking about some heavy stuff here, I'm reflecting on some of the things that Gottman, who is in many respects considered to be kind of like the dean of marriage education, but where he spoke about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And when you talk about things like that withdrawal, you're talking about very serious things, because there's some individuals who have this tendency. Okay, last week we were discussing the matter of allowing our spouses, or was it the week before, the opportunity or the privilege rather to say the right to say no. And then so my spouse says no, and as a result we didn't go through with this particular decision and things didn't work out well, and I begin to attack my spouse. It's your fault, this is why I don't so, and I get upset and I hold my own corner. I'm using a kind of colloquial term here now, but I hold my own corner. So I stop speaking to my spouse. I don't say anything to my spouse. I get up, I get ready for work, I make my own breakfast, I go about my business. And that kind of withdrawal thing. So if anything comes up, if there is a situation where I have to make a reference, I always have to put in, if it weren't for you, so and so is the case. These are very significant things. Now, these kinds of behaviors, in fact, anytime we use tactics of guilt and shame and blame, we are driving nails in the coffin of our marriage. And that is not a good thing. You may feel in the moment that you are scoring some victories over your spouse, but I want you to stop and consider for a moment that if you are scoring victories over your spouse, if you are feeling justified by your action because you are punishing your spouse for quote unquote the bad behavior or the unwillingness for them to accede to your desires or your requests, you are therefore competing against your spouse. And when you compete against your spouse, you lose the team spirit. It's no longer the two of you on one team, and you are violating the principles of God. For God says that no man should put them asunder. Nobody should separate them. And you, it's not somebody on the outside who's coming to separate now, but you are coming to bring a divide between you and your spouse, which is not a good thing, which is a violation of the command of God, so to speak. So these are very destructive things. You don't want to go down that road, which is why we're saying that you're going to have to discipline yourself to get to the point. If you realize that you have the tendencies to withdraw from your spouse, the tendency to attack, the tendency to, I believe you use the term, devalue your spouse, then you are heading down a path of destruction. It is the beginning of the death of the relationship, and we don't want to go down that road.
And you're correct. You're exactly right. Because, well, in fact, in a sense, the true sense of the word, it is still controlling behavior because I can't get my own way, so I'm going to react in this way. So in a sense, it is still controlling behavior. I still want to control and manipulate. And if I can't do that, I'm going to react in this way to make you feel a particular way, or to make you feel a particular way so that the outcome will be a particular way. And then I can, well, maybe castigate you or blame you entirely for what went wrong or what is, you know. So we are coming back to the point that we made in the previous broadcast, right? These are evidences to show that you are really becoming a boundary-loving spouse, and if the tendency still remains, you know, where you are doing these things, then you're not moving from that position of being a spouse that does not love boundary to becoming one who loves boundaries. And as you rightly quoted, Gottman, and he is well, both of them, husband and wife team, they have written some tremendous things in these areas here. These are predictable factors that the relationship, the marriage will not last. It's going down the hill. You know, these are predictable factors when we have this controlling behavior, and that controlling behavior that leads to the point where we become so critical, hypercritical, and begin to behave in ways of contempt toward the spouse. It has really gone bad. When we call so you don't want it to come to that point at all, because it can easily slip to that point when I'm not getting my way. Because remember, I said in the last broadcast how strong self is, and when self is not controlled or dethroned, it can be so destructive, because we see what the matter of self has done to the creation, and that has us all in this predicament here that we're in now, this whole predicament of sin. Self is very dangerous.
Very good point, Pastor. In fact, you took the words out of my mouth. Self is very dangerous, because what is really happening here, what you are in fact doing is you're losing control of your own self. And perhaps it's a good thing, perhaps it's a great thing, in fact, for you to admit, hey, listen, because, you know, some persons really struggle with this matter of submission. You know, we go back to Ephesians chapter 5, but some people really struggle with this matter of submission. And it may be that there is a spouse who is helpless. They really can't control the urge not to control. And when they're not in charge, they feel out of sorts. They walk in the room and immediately they take over. And they want to give orders, and they want to say this, and they want to do that. And if you realize you're there, you may have to just accept the fact that I need help. And I think what what is important now, if you lack humility, it's going to be a real struggle for you, but it is a victory to get to the point where you realize, hey, listen, I may need some help. We're not saying that everybody needs the outside intervention, but when it becomes obsessive, when you're trying not to do this and you're suffering from withdrawal symptoms as though you have an addictive behavior to be in control, then it's time to accept reality that you need some therapy, you need some outside help, you need to seek somebody who can sit you down and work you through some stuff so that you can recover. I know that a lot of people, especially in some regions of the world, shy away from this idea of going to a counselor, of getting therapy, of getting counseling. But we keep saying on this broadcast that when, in a sense, we're all sick and therefore all need a checkup every now and then, because without it, you may get to the point where you realize it's too late. I have a close friend, Pastor Adams, and I got a call some time ago that this individual went for a checkup. In fact, they didn't go for a checkup. They just didn't feel well. And perhaps because they have not been doing regular annual checkups, that on this occasion when they were not feeling well, didn't feel sick before, but they went and discovered that it's too late now. It's literally practically too late now. The doctors say, hey, listen, it's over. You're gonna die. And when we treat our relationships, our marriages the same way. And we shy away from counseling. Your church is organizing a marriage enrichment seminar, or you hear on Marriage Encounter that we're having a couples retreat or something to that effect. And your spouse comes home and says, let's go to this. You say, I don't want anybody help me with my relationship. I'm in charge. Nobody come and tell me what to do. When we have that kind of attitude, you may sadly wake up one of these days to discover that your spouse is gone, or that the relationship has broken down to the point of disrepair. And we are saying it's okay to accept the fact that you may have a fault, you may have a growth area. I was going to say weakness, but I'm choosing to say a growth area, and you need some therapy overcoming this. It's okay for you and your spouse to sit down, discuss, and say, why don't we go and seek some professional help in this area? It can be the catalyst to change your relationship for the better.
And you are so true. You are so correct. I guess we could spend the rest of the program time just talking to this alone, because every marriage, every family, every experience need renewal from time to time. And no marriage is so good that it cannot become better. No marriage is so good that it cannot become better. And even before going for therapy, the new approach now, those of us who are premarital counseling specialists, there is a new approach now to say that even when we have counseled people and have prepared them for marriage, we should check in with them 6 months, a year after, to know that these things are working and that there are no issues developing, that they can nip it in the bud before it gets to a point where it, like you said with the illustration, like the person who went too late to get the checkup, and so very, very crucial. And when you mention help and counseling, and so there's counseling, there is the general education, there's enrichment, all of these things we do to improve the relationship in marriage between spouses, between families, parents and their children. These things are so very important. But prior to that, we have to understand that when we come together in this union, and I'm glad we are having this particular, we're talking to this particular issue here, because the reality is we want people to understand that while we are discussing these things, these things that we're discussing here is born out of the reality, the fact that we are different, because when we come in that alliance, it's two different personalities. And therefore, in the premarital counseling preparation, that's why we do the personality testing. is there a type of personality that is more predisposed to controlling behavior? Yes, there is a personality type. Having done all of these personality testing and so before people get married, and so you have all of these personality. What if somebody is a 100% strong choleric? That tendency of controlling is definitely going to be there. But if you know that personality type before you get married, you know your personality type and what behavior might be predisposed to, then you are going to subject yourself to the rule of maturity to know that I got to work on this, I got to change this behavior, right? Because we're not absolutely bound by those constructs. We can modify them, we can help to improve them with the patients, because we discussed patients a couple of time back from both sides, both my spouse being patient with me and me being patient with my own self. So these are so very, but they all dovetail into one another. So it's not in the marriage itself, even before the marriage starts. It is essential for us to get the personality testing done because some personality types are more predisposed to some behaviors than others.
Well, we have just about 60 seconds, Pastor, so I just want to make this additional point. No need to go over all that you have said, but I want to use the illustration. You know, when a baby is born, and I'm strengthening the fact that, you know, after the premarital counseling, you do need some follow-up after the marriage, that is. When a baby is born, there is the need for the mother to go and do checkups, you know, on a regular basis. I believe they actually give them a schedule of when they need to go to the clinic, carry the child, make sure the child is properly immunized and those kinds of stuff, you know. So that follow-up is important. If we do not give attention, and we have said it on this program before, there is maintenance and there is repair. If we do not maintain, we're going to have expensive repair work to do. If we treat, because you mentioned things like marriage education, like counseling, like therapy, and all on different levels, you know, but if we expose ourselves, if we have a positive attitude towards the growth and development of our marriage, and we are willing to do the necessary maintenance work, the repair work will become less necessary, right? That is as much as I can say for now. Our time is up. So I want to wish you success in giving attention to your relationship. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, Marriage Encounter at slcadventist.org. That is Marriage Encounter at slcadventist.org. The good news is that we're going to be back here next week to continue this very intriguing discussion. But that's all the time we have. Until then, may God bless.